Hello and welcome back to Chat About It, Don't Shout About It with me, Rachel, the Queen of the Woke, as crowned by one of my haters. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video, and thank you to everyone who's joined me already. I can't run this channel without you. Today we are looking at the Jodie Whittaker story, The Woman Who Fell to Earth. Whilst the Jodie stories are not submitted to the poll, there is currently one running on the post page if you would like to actually vote for it. The Woman Who Fell to Earth is the debut story of Jodie Whittaker. It was written by the new showrunner Chris Chibnall. It was directed by Jamie Catchpole-Childs and it aired to 10.96 million people in consolidation and makes it the highest of Jodie's stories in viewership and actually one of the highest debuts of all time. Ryan sees golden glowing lines floating in the air after throwing his bike over a cliff in the woods. He touches it and it disappears suddenly. In place is a giant pod. He phones the police. Yaz attends the scene but thinks Ryan is winding her up. Meanwhile, Grace and Graham are on the train. The train becomes under siege from a giant energy ball which was acting like a type of scout looking for a man named Carl. The doctor crash lands through the roof of the train and immediately takes charge of the situation whilst not being able to remember who she is. She doesn't have a sonic screwdriver, so she has to think on her feet for once and discovers that she's taken on a Stenza warrior who is on Earth looking for Carl. Can the doctor defeat the warrior to save Carl? As I wrote the script for this, I realised how weak this plot actually sounded. I don't mean to start on a bummer, but I'm sorry, I'm going to have to. I was thinking, is that it? Is that all? Normally, the doctor has something extremely challenging to take on, but this was a bit underwhelming, I must say. Now, don't get me wrong, this story has its strengths as well as its weaknesses, and if you like Jodie's era, then that's okay. The ratings for this were high, and I think that's mostly because we have a female doctor, but this story really just niggles me in the wrong way for a lot of it, and I think it's probably the most contentious attitude to making it perfectly clear that we are supposed to think the new female doctor is amazing. I don't like the opening with Ryan talking about the best woman in the world he has ever met. It's leading the viewer to believe that he's actually talking about the doctor because we know that the doctor's going to be female when he's not, and it's purposely done that way because why? We have a female doctor. It's the first female doctor and we need to hammer it into the viewer's brains. However, it's not all doom and gloom in the opening. I actually really like the effects of the golden glowing lines at the beginning, and I really like the transportation pod. The fact that it's also a companion that triggers the whole entire story, I like this as well. I'm not too keen on the making out of Ryan being a total and utter dimwit, but I don't mind them having a character that's affected by dyspraxia. Whilst it's not easy falling off a bike like that continuously for the camera, it does show a slightly different side to a character that we rarely get to see in Doctor Who. I know that people find Ryan a little bit annoying, and I understand. It's fine. That's up to you. I'm not actually too bothered about him in that sense. I actually don't find him that annoying at all. I just wish he had a bit more oomph, and I think the bit more oomph needs to come from the actual actor playing him. His nan, however, was a brilliant character, and I do wish that she hadn't died in it, basically. I know Bradley Walsh is the bigger name here, and as great as Bradley Walsh actually is, I do wish that Grace had actually become a companion officially. She's funny, she's quirky, she's optimistic, she's pragmatic. I think she would have been a great asset to the Doctor, and at the same time, the worst asset to the Doctor. She would have allowed for a very interesting dynamic for sure, because she's not afraid to just get up and dive straight in, and obviously that is a bit of a danger for the Doctor, naturally, of course. One of my favourite bits, though, is the Doctor actually falling directly through the train roof and standing up as if nothing has happened and jumped right into action, so to speak. Just wham bam, oh wait, I'm here, okay, oh what's that? And she just carries on. This leads to the majority of the episode making a point that we have a female Doctor. Listen, I know we have had instances where the Doctor has not remembered his name, but this was done on purpose to really drive it in home that Jodie was now the Doctor was now female. You just wanted her to remember her name and get on with the story. It just gets on my wick. I know Jodie is only doing what's written, but it's really irritating. It took 51 minutes to get the name out. In fact, in this episode, Chibs also uses the cringe word for the first time, and that's fam. What is the deal with that? Fam. I don't know if that is how he talks, but I've never heard anything like that before. It's never been said where I grew up anyway, and I've never heard it since. I wondered if he was trying to make it sound cool, hip, and somewhat relatable. It's truly not, though. It really isn't. I also know that actors and actresses have to do some really bizarre, weird things when performing, but since when does sticking a finger up your nostril is one of them? That's weird and disgusting. I'm not sure if it were a director's choice, a writer's choice, or an actress choice. Although I can't imagine that it would have been Jodie, and I would have been surprised if it were. Another irritating thing for me personally is the return of the sonic screwdriver. Oh, how predictable am I? Not only that, it's a phallic sonic screwdriver. Jodie's TARDIS is also phallic. I think we need a constant reminder we now have a female doctor, so therefore she must have phallic implements. I suppose that the only advantage with Jodie's Sonic is that it doesn't actually work properly all the time. The batteries quite often run out. Think about it, people. Think about it. And where enough did she actually get that smart tech from? The pod? The bringing back of the Sonic meant that the resolution was naturally very rushed and very simple, which is for the most part quite annoying, as the DNA bombs were actually the best bit about this story. Phallic battery Sonic dying aside, the idea behind the melting DNA through a bomb is absolutely terrifying in many respects, because you don't know when it's going to be triggered and it's unseen, and you really don't know how it's going to be resolved. And sometimes what you can't see is actually more scary than what you can see. And well, all she did was essentially remove them with phallic screwdriver. By the way, did I mention I really hate the sonic screwdriver? It would have been much more of an intriguing story had it actually focused on that rather than a tooth-grabbing alien. Although I must admit that the makeup for the Stenza warrior is pretty vulgar. The teeth being embedded into the face like that, I can't imagine it. It certainly would have played on some people's minds for sure. Now, like I said, the resolution was way too quick, and that was because they fully intended to not have Ryan's Nan, Grace, as a companion. I think it does make an immediate impact with the viewer because Grace is actually extremely likable. Out of all of the companions in this story, she is probably the most likable, I would say. And I actually think that's a lot to do with how Sharon D. Clarke actually played her. They did the resolution so that they could essentially get her to climb up and electrocute the scout and then just fall and pass away. So then they could actually have a funeral for her character. And this was also very divisive, so that this could actually build more background and more make the characters more relatable. And it would also add to obviously Graham's character in particular because of what he is a survivor from cancer. And it possibly also maybe gives the viewer some form of connection to all of the companions and the new doctor on screen, because Grace's death obviously impacts all of them, and Ryan in particular, actually. I suppose this is something, without going down the impossible companion route, that New Who does slightly better than classic. Whilst I don't want to constantly delve into the companions so much with the stories so that it becomes Companion Who featuring the Doctor, I don't mind embellishments all the time. I don't mind those little details being added. So long as it doesn't impact what's going on with the story too much, I really have no issue with it, and it makes it more interesting actually from an acting perspective as well. They don't have a lot of time to establish themselves, really. That's a big issue with New Who, not enough time. Jodie is very clearly unclear on which way she wanted to actually go in at this point with the Doctor, although I would say that most actors, when they first take on the role of the Doctor, they're not really sure what they're going to do at that point in the first story. They've just got to lay the groundwork and make themselves the Doctor. A lot of people mention that she takes on a David Tennant-esque type of performance with her doctor. I don't really see it all the time. I think she is trying to make it her own, and I think she is trying to make it sound very intelligent. And I think she's actually doing what she can with a very mediocre story in this case. I think she definitely lays the groundwork, so to speak, and people were actually still watching it at this point. People didn't switch off immediately after this. Whilst the story is mediocre, it is safe to say at this point, Doctor Who and the Doctor still actually sounded like the show. And that's actually one thing that I've maintained fully, even to the end of her run about the Jodie Doctor, was that the Jodie Doctor, she still sounded like the Doctor, and it didn't kind of make sense because obviously she changed from male to female, and so the writing wasn't adjusted with femininity. It still sounded very much like a man, but the point is, it wasn't changed. It didn't really last long in that sense. It stopped sounding like the Doctor, but that's a whole other video, and I'm sure we'll get to it. Oh, wait, no, we probably have got to it more than once. But anyway, that's what I think. Let me know what you think. Chat about it, don't shout about it. I will see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.